Welcome to Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman with Jonathan Litzkin, my co-host, as always. And this is the first episode of the 2023-2024 season previews. We're going to talk about the Florida Atlantic Owls with Kevin Fielder. Down there.
Right here.
Yeah. Right there. Kevin, point to yourself. Jonathan?
Red, blue, FAU.
Again.
I have no idea if that's a real chant or not.
I don't think that is. I'm going to be honest.
I didn't think it was
that
either,
is.
But I have a friend who said it once and it kind of just caught on. So
it's not a real chant, but it's funny.
Hey, it sounds good. So I'll continue to chant.
By the way, I one time looked that up to see if it was a real chant. Nothing came up.
I have been to enough FAU basketball games over the last 4 years to confirm that it has never been a chant.
I've been to 3 FAU basketball games. I've never heard that chant.
Okay, you went to March Madness games. Those don't count.
I went to more Florida Atlantic basketball games than 99.9% of the American population.
They all missed out. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, anyway. What is the number one question in your head about FAU basketball this year? What are the voices saying?
The voices are saying, man, last season was really fun. Can they somehow do that again? Because you don't just make the Final Four by chance. I never really believed this whole idea that you just got to get lucky a whole bunch of times and you make the Final Four. But also, FAU kind of just got lucky a bunch of times last year, didn't they? And
yeah, the whole theory that we have is that when you hit your 100th percentile, you're not hitting it again. Then it wouldn't be the 100th percentile. It would be the 99th percentile.
And I don't know if that last season was is there a chance they win the national championship? I think that there's certainly a better chance than 90% of the teams in the country right now, maybe 95% of the teams in the country. But also, they made the Final Four last year as a 9 seed. And this was their first season in the NCAA tournament in 20 years. And it's probably before Sam was alive. I think that there is so much that could, someone had to get a shot right now and it was you. But there is just so much that went right last season that I'm not sure it all goes right again.
Yeah. I mean, the thought process for me is that it took them going, what was the regular season record? 31-3?
31-3, I think. Yes.
Mm-hmm. 31-3 got them a 9 seed.
Well, I mean, if we're being honest, they shouldn't have been a 9 seed. They were a far better team, but
they shouldn't have been. They should have been a 5 seed. But
we knew that, and I think there is a part of them that they're playing in a better conference this year, so the quality of competition is going to be better if that somehow happens again. But Kevin, I want to ask you if they do regress, which it seems almost imminent that they do a little bit. What do you think that looks like?
I don't think regression is going to hit them like a truck. And I don't think there's a situation where they're incredibly bad next year. I know that some fan bases in the American want to believe that that's a situation that happens. But,
Memphis.
Yeah, no, really, I didn't want to call them out, but it's all Memphis fans who think that.
We're going to get Will on the Memphis preview. That will be fun.
I just hope it doesn't turn into a therapy session. But
we don't know when that will be, but we should get both of you on the same podcast at once.
Please. I will happily do that.
Explode.
I will happily do that. As the voice of reason for FAU, I would happily do that because I don't get angry at Memphis fans. I get it. You guys lost on a buzzer beater. That must suck. Maybe don't lose on a buzzer beater. I don't know what to tell you. But I don't think, in terms of going back to the question of what is regression, I don't think regression is not making the tournament. I think they're a tournament team next year. And I think saying they're a tournament team is not breaking the world on fire. I think that they're going to compete in the American and they're going to make the tournament. Do they win another tournament game? Do they make the Sweet 16 again? All these questions probably get figured out in due time. But they have enough depth. They have enough talent that for the most part, they should be a tournament team next year. And it would almost shock me if they're not one next year.
Now, if they're not a tournament team, it probably starts in the non-conference play. It's a super difficult schedule. It's a really good schedule. And if they lose 4 or 5 of those games and they lose 4 or 5 games in American Conference play, you're looking at 10 losses, maybe even 11, and that's probably not making the tournament out of the American.
Yeah, the non-conference tournament is a lot harder than it was in year past. And you look at last year's non-conference tournament, or non-conference schedule, and it was like really Florida, Ole Miss, and a whole bunch of teams they really needed to be. And
Bryant was supposed to be pretty good, but they weren't.
Yeah. it was supposed to be good, and then you realize that Doug Edert was a one-time little cool thing.
No, it wasn't even Doug Edert. Doug Edert was supposed to be like their 7th best player.
Yeah, no, like
South Alabama was good, and they crushed them.
they had like good opponents, but not great opponents. Like South Alabama was a good opponent. Eastern Michigan was dangerous because Amani Bates is a thing.
Well, they were also one of the worst teams in college.
Yeah, I mean, Bryant was supposed to be good. Florida,
I had them in my top 100, and I don't regret that. They came to the Dome and beat Syracuse.
Florida was okay. Like Florida was okay. They were a thing.
I thought Florida was going to be so good.
And then like Ole Miss was Ole Miss. Like just so many things sort of went right for FAU. And again, it goes back to like, was last season the 100th percentile where everything went right?
Yes,
and
it was. Name one thing that went wrong.
But I'm not sure that's the case because that team is also just really damn good. Like,
name one thing that went wrong.
No, I mean, yes, nothing went wrong in the sense
okay, and it was their 100th percentile.
But like, was that the 100th percentile in the sense of like everything went right and their talent is just going to be talent? Or was that team incredibly well coached, had enough dudes that they can survive any storm, and had an offense that was like an offensive system that was unique enough where teams didn't know how to exploit it? Like,
yes, the unique teams. That was one of the things that Jonathan and I discussed every single March, and we've done this for 2 Marches now, so it's not every single March, but the last 2 Marches we discussed
large sample size of 2 Marches, but
we just it's a bigger sample size than 1.
Yeah, like so FAU had this offense.
Teams. I think we discounted FAU as a unique team.
Oh, I tried to tell people not to, and they all went, "Well, it's FAU," but whatever.
I just like didn't like the matchup that they drew.
I loved the matchup. I loved the matchup.
Like, it ended up being that like Penny got out coached because like every other fucking game he coaches. But
if I speak,
but
I can't wait for the Memphis preview. I really can't.
I do think that there was a part of it where like a reasonable basketball fan watches that game and was like, okay, Memphis may have been the better team tonight. FAU just executed better down the stretch
and scored more points.
Memphis turned it over.
Memphis was the better team until who was it? What was the guy's name? Their best player,
Kendrick Davis.
Yeah, and until Kendrick Davis got hurt. And when Kendrick Davis got hurt, their entire offense sort of sputtered. And that, I think, is more of a byproduct of, dude, when you play iso ball in college basketball, that dude better be healthier. You ain't going to be able to play iso ball all year.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And he was healthy most of the year, and they were really good because he was really good.
Yeah, but then once he got hurt.
He's been one of the best players in the country for the last 3-4 years.
Once he got hurt,
and he's now going to go play for the Guangdong Tigers, but...
Well, I mean, yeah, he was like 5'10", so didn't really have much of an NBA
still is
chance.
5'10". Let's not act like he grew.
But like, so that was arguably their toughest matchup on paper in terms of like schematically and the sense of like having one good guy who they won't be able to stop. Because I looked at Fairleigh Dickinson and FDU was a cool story. They were also just not that good.
They were
like
tiny.
They were a 16 seed for a reason, guys.
I talked to Tobin this past week and like, yeah, that team wasn't that good.
Yeah, they had their tallest guy was my height. Like, you're not exactly going to win many games. No, I'm 6'1". It was more of an exaggeration.
And then
I met you. You're not 6'5".
And then we get to the Sweet 16, and they get Tennessee, who I watched that every game of that team.
I felt incredibly comfortable with Tennessee. I
thought Tennessee should have won that game. You know why?
They should have.
Because Rick Barnes is a dumbass.
Yeah, I mean...
And Rick Barnes kept taking Julian Phillips out of the game. But Julian Phillips is the only guy that could rotate on those threes.
Yeah, it was very much like FAU had the perfect game plan to beat Tennessee. And then I felt a little bit less comfortable about Kansas State. And I was like, okay, is this going to be a game where Marquise Noel is just Marquise Noel? And there's no stopping Marquise Noel when Marquise Noel is Marquise Noel. But like, they found a way to sort of limit him. They did enough on offense. It was not a pretty game. It was, in fact, pretty much an ugly basketball game. But they did enough at times to win the game. And so, like, everything sort of went right for them all season. And I think that there's certainly a case where that just doesn't happen again. And they lose 9-8 games, and then we're discussing if they're a tournament team. But I think that team has enough talent coming back and enough experience and have enough to prove that that's not going to happen.
I want to real quick, Sam, real quick before you jump into something. I want to ask the flip side of my question. Let's say, like, because they did have some younger players last year. Golden was a sophomore. Boyd was a sophomore. If there are players on this team that take jumps and the older guys kind of just play to their level, what do you think that looks like?
I mean, we saw it last year, right? They made the Final Four.
Same thing.
Like, I think that the ceiling is a Final Four national championship team. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say that every day until the season begins, because everyone's going to sit here. Yeah, I mean, until the season ends, because if they start the season off hot and they win all their non-conference games, we're talking about a team that's ranked in the top 5. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So, like,
we're talking about one of the best teams in the country. I mean, we're talking about. I mean, look, where do we have this team? We both have this team in our top 25.
I would have them in my top 15. Right now, I'd have them in the top 15.
I have them right around the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both a little bit lower on them than you are, which is completely fair and understandable.
It may be the homerism of, hey, man, I got a tuition paycheck, or I said tuition paycheck there every semester. So,
well, you don't do it anymore. So,
thanks for reminding me. But no, like, I think that there is a lot that can go right. And I look at this team from top to bottom and I go, Elijah Martin and John L. Davis are two of the better basketball players in the country. Then you have solid, viable players who are going to provide good output. Nick Boyd, I really like Brian Greenlee, Vlad Golden. Like, those are good basketball players.
I'm a huge fan of Rosado off the bench.
Oh, John Claudio Rosado is my favorite player in college basketball right now because he is so old-fashioned and it is so cool to watch. But like, then the biggest question is, like, who replaces Michael Forrest? Because someone has to replace Michael Forrest.
That's who left. I was thinking to myself, wait, who was the guy that left? And I'm like, that's who it is.
Yeah, and like, Michael Forrest was not great last year. And there was a lot of struggles last year in terms of, like, man, he just didn't feel the same way. And I think that might have been role, that might have been usage. He came off the bench a lot last year, and he's never come off the bench for FAU. But also, he is the entire heart and soul of that basketball team. And he was the entire heart and soul of that basketball team. And they went as Mike Forrest led them. So, like,
and he took over the game in the Sweet 16 against Tennessee.
Yeah, when they needed him the most, they could count on him. And that's what you're going to have to replace. And it's very much a thing of, like, man, I feel pretty comfortable in Elijah Martin and John L. Davis replacing that. But who takes his spot in the rotation? Because they did not go in the transfer portal. They did not go get a dude from the transfer portal like I think a lot of people thought they would. And so they're really betting on in-house development. And they're betting on one of oh God, what's his name?
Devin Vanderpool, the freshman?
No, Trey Carroll and Brennan Lorian. I don't know why I couldn't remember Brennan Lorian's name, but, like, they're betting on one of these guys being good enough. And if they're not, can they shorten the rotation and go like 9 men? I think they can go just 9 man rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I bet they could.
But they want to go 10. They want to go 10. They want to be able to go deep, and they're betting on one of those guys being good enough.
I bet that it'll be fine even if they go to 9. That's my thing. Now, here's my thing. The margin for error for a team, even in the American Conference, is so much. It's so thin compared to the margin for error that you get in the Big 10 or Big 12. So, if this, let's take a look at the non-conference schedule. You start with Loyola Chicago in Chicago.
They should win that, but I don't think it'll be easy.
Yeah, I mean, Loyola Chicago is a top 100 team.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good basketball team. FAU's better, but you have to travel through Chicago. You have to play a team that's sort of experienced, that's old, that's gritty. Like, there's just so many things that can go wrong in a game like that.
Big Loyola crowd. It's one of their big games of the last couple of years.
Like, it's just not one of those games where it's like, yeah, man, it's a win. Cool. What's the next one?
All right, the next one, though, is Eastern Michigan. And, yeah, that's a win. Okay, cool.
Please.
What's the next one? Bryant. Okay, that's another win.
Should be a win.
And then it's the ESPN Events Invitational. And it's Butler. And it's Butler, which is a top 100 team.
It's Texas A&M, I think.
It's Butler's the first game.
Okay, so Butler, I feel pretty confident in saying they'll win.
And then it's Texas A&M / Penn State.
I don't feel comfortable in saying they win those games. I don't feel really comfortable in saying that.
I do not either. That is a really tough matchup. Jonathan loves Texas A&M. He has them in there. He has them in his top 15.
And I think Penn State can be dangerous this year. Like, I think Penn State can just be really.
I mean, I think Mike Rhodes is one of the best coaches in college basketball. And then there's Iowa State, who's the best team in that tournament. If they end up making it to the finals, that's a top 15 team in the country without a doubt.
I think that, like, now the biggest question is can FAU form a game plan for that one game and win? Because I'm going to say this right now: if there is a one game set and I need a coach who's going to game plan the hell out of that one game, give me Dusty May and his coaching staff, because I think they've proven at this point that if there's a one game plan that needs to come out, they're going to build a game plan that's going to win them that game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, we saw it last year in the tournament multiple times. So
I think it's not the end of the world if you lose a game in that tournament. I think if you lose 2, it's a problem.
It will really depend on who those 2 losses are. If it's Iowa State and like Texas A&M, and Texas A&M ends up being a really good tournament team, then I think that
Iowa State and Texas A&M, that means Iowa State lost to either Boise State or Virginia Tech.
Oh yeah, so it can't be both of those. But if it's
it could be. I mean, it
could be
a top 50 team.
It could be, but like if you lose 2 games that tournament, it better be the teams that end up making the tournament. And because you're going to have a really hard time saying, "Hey man, we have a good strength of schedule," if the 2 teams you lost to in a non-conference tournament were 2 teams that didn't end up making the tournament.
Yeah. Then it's Liberty with no Darius McGee, but they do have Colin Porter, Joe Vincent.
They should
Shiloh,
win.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Shiloh, what's his last name?
Shiloh Robinson.
Yeah.
Is that one home or away? Do they have to go to Lynchburg?
No, that's home.
They should win. I feel pretty confident.
That's Charleston, another home game.
Good basketball team. They should win.
And then it gets tough. Illinois in New York. This is the game that I like. If you lose 2 games in Kissimmee and you lose to Illinois, you're already at 3 losses before you get into conference play.
Yeah.
And before you take on a really good St. Bonaventure team in Springfield, Massachusetts on December 16th.
I will say I think they split the Illinois St. Bonaventure sort of duo there. I think they're going to win one. I think they're going to lose one. And that should be fine. They should be able to afford a few losses. I think that there are going to be a few things that play in their hand. And I know people don't want to say that the story matters in the NCAA tournament. Guys, they pick teams based off stories sometimes. We don't need to pretend like they don't. Like, they're going to have the benefit of the doubt. They're going to have they should have enough good wins if the American looks good like it did last year with all the new teams coming in and these non-conference schedules. But they can't afford to fall it off the wagon. It can't fall off the wagon quickly. Because if it falls off the wagon quickly, you're talking about a team that has to win the tournament to make it to the NCAA tournament.
I think that FAU, just this year specifically, they did, Sam, and we talk about this all the time, they did something that not a lot of high majors and just like teams with tournament aspirations in high major leagues like to do, which is they scheduled like mid-majors that you don't want to like take a loss to because it could really hurt your resume. But in FAU's case, like they're not playing in a high major league, so that could more.
They kind of have to do it. They kind of have to do it. Like
if and you go in, a big risk. And look, here's what I say: if FAU lost 2 more regular season games last year, like they went to overtime with FIU and Louisiana Tech, and if they lost those games and they lost the Middle Tennessee game in the tournament, do they make the NCAA tournament?
No, they're an NIT team.
And that's crazy because they'd be the same team. They'd still be just
But frankly, again, if we're being honest, that was all nonsense because every single time I sat here and I banged the table for them and I said, guys, this is a tournament team. We need to stop pretending like it's not a tournament team. But it's the same discussion that we have every year with these teams. It's like, well, actually, we all want the SEC team that has 6 not quality. Shut up. I don't care. Shut up. I don't care. Like FAU last year should have been a tournament team going into the Conference USA tournament, and it was not guaranteed at that point. And everyone I spoke to who was involved with bracketology and everything said, well, they should make it, but we don't know. They could always just not make it if they don't win the tournament. And so, like, that's nonsense. But, like, it is very much true in the sense of, like, if they lost 1 or 2 more regular season games and didn't win the conference tournament, we're talking about a team that's in the NIT right now.
And that's ridiculous. But look, that's the world we live in. That's the margin for error. Now, I think FAU has a built-in margin for error this year because of how good they were last year.
And I also think the American's going to be so much better than the Conference USA was. So they're going to have the other built-in thing of like, hey, man, they're playing in a tougher conference. And
but even with losing Houston and Cincinnati, UCF's whatever, they weren't great anyway.
Johnny Dawkins.
Even with losing Houston and Cincinnati, like you bring over all the best Conference USA programs.
You bring in FAU, you bring in a Rice team that won a tournament game.
And you still have some of the good, and obviously Memphis included in that. You still have
Also Charlotte.
American
Charlotte.
programs.
We gotta say Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte, like I think USF is going to be a lot better because they finally have a competent head coach.
I would agree.
Like everything sort of looks like this conference is going to be a better conference than it was a year ago. Compared to the Conference USA, in the sense of like, if we look at the Conference USA was very top heavy in the sense of you had 4 teams that were really good, and then you also had FIU in that conference, and we can't forget FIU had to play basketball last year. Like,
hey!
No, I'm going to be honest.
Denver Jones was good.
They had one good player. They were also a bad football team or basketball team. They were also a bad football team, but like they're going to have added margin in the sense of like they were good last year. They made the Final Four last year. Everyone's going to be interested to see if they continue. They're going to have the built-in preseason ranking. They should probably be a top 5 team in the preseason polls.
Which is ridiculous, by the way, and we'll get into that.
Well, can we be honest? Preseason polls are ridiculous because
hey,
what are we judging?
You guys who've made a top 100.
Okay, but top 100 is different because it's like, okay, well, there's enough margin for error in the top 100, but like, what do we do with the top?
People don't seem to realize that there is.
Like, what do we do with the top 5? It's like, well, the FAU made the Final Four last year, and they were up 10 points in the Final Four game, and
14, right?
I don't want to remember. I'm trying to forget that game happened. Can we please stop talking? No, I'm kidding. But
I'm sorry.
Like, so, and they lost on a very fluky shot too. Like, it was not like they got outplayed.
I keep saying they should have called timeout, but they didn't.
Well, it's one of those things of like, do you call timeout?
I turned to Isaac Bourne, fellow Mid-Major Madness writer, right before San Diego State got that, like before they came out of that timeout with like 16 seconds left. I was like, if they get a stop here, they're calling timeout and getting Trammell and Bradley back in the game. But Dutch, to set after the game, they didn't have any sets left.
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't remember that?
I don't remember. I was not in the.
And by the way, I think that has to do with why UConn just ran riot on them.
Yeah, like, so here's the question that I have to ask.
UConn knew that they didn't have any sets left.
So here's the question I have to ask, and let's go hypothetical here. And I know this is a 2023 preview, but let's go hypothetical. If FAU beats San Diego State, how close is that national championship game?
It's about the same.
I think UConn wins. I think it's under 10 points.
I think it's slightly closer.
It was
like
under
around
10
12.
for most. It was under 10 with like 7 minutes left. It's not like that whole game was a blowout.
I think that there is a discussion last year that if they, so first of all, I felt that they would have had a chance to beat UConn, a very off chance. I think that again, it's the discussion of like.
Now, I might be biased here, but
you are absolutely biased. But also, like,
I do agree.
Game
UConn played
I do agree. Like, I think UConn's size would have been a huge problem for FAU, even though they're big. I think that like everything would have been dependent on how they beat Sonogo and Klingon, and I don't think they would have been able to beat both of them.
Just not enough strength.
Yeah, and so like,
I'll throw in my 2 cents here. I'll throw in my 2 cents here. I think that there were times during that national championship game when San Diego State, literally, no matter what they did, could not put the ball in the basket.
They were an incredibly bad offense team. They were incredibly bad offensively. So
that doesn't happen to FAU. So
yeah, there was like a 10-minute stretch where they didn't score, and it was like the greatest 10 minutes of my life.
I think that there is a discussion that like there are points next year or last year during a UConn FAU national championship where it's like a 3-point game. Kind of early in the second half.
5 minutes left in the real national championship game.
I don't care. It was not a 5-point game. Anyone who says that was a 5-point game is nonsense.
Look at the goddamn scoreboard.
I don't care about the scoreboard.
It was 60-55.
That 76-59 final score accurately reflected how the game was played.
Yeah, come on, guys. It was not a 5-point game, even if the scoreboard said it was a 5-point game. But like, I think that there's a discussion last year of like, with 5 minutes left in the game, we're talking about a possibility of FAU winning the national championship. I don't think they win the national championship. Let's be clear. I don't want any UConn fan who's listening to this going, "Wow, this man thought that FAU would win the national championship." I don't think that. I think they would have kept it close, and I think it would have been competitive. So this is a very good FAU team, but also there's so many things that have to go right again for you to make the Final Four.
All right, we can now talk about the actual players that make up this team.
That's so fun.
We don't have that much time left. But we've kind of skirted around that. We all think Janelle Davis can be an NBA player, correct?
Yes, absolutely. No doubt in my mind.
Talk about Janelle, Kevin. You've seen a lot more of him than we have.
one of those players who I feel like are so complete in everything they do. They can play make, they're good off the ball, they're good on the ball. And when FAU needed big time performances last year, he was who they called on. We look at UAB in the regular season. We look at Memphis or FDU, where he had the insane stat line of like, hey man, how is he doing this in an NCAA tournament game? So like when they needed performances, he was the guy who stepped up. There were also times last year where he was neutralized. And I don't know if that was a microcosm of, you know, him still learning how to play in this role, because he was not a big time player previous to last year. He was sort of a good bench role rotation player. This year should be better in terms of learning how to play in that role and being really good and being proactive in terms of like taking your shots when they're there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of talk about which Memphis player is going to win American Player of the Year, right?
We should talk about Janelle Davis a little bit more there. I'm just going to be honest, guys.
I'm sure you've seen that, right?
Yeah, I wish I did.
I think Janelle Davis has a chance.
He should have a chance, yes.
And like, I really think Janelle Davis, in terms of a shot creator with that type of athleticism at that size, it's unique in college basketball. He's what, 6'6"?
6'6", yeah. I mean, he can play make.
He handles, he shoots, he does everything.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly complete basketball player.
And Elijah Martin's really good too. Let's not discount it. These are 2 first-team All-American conference players. Not All-American conference.
Yeah.
I mean, I will be honest. I think Nelly has All-American potential. Very off chance of it, but like if he has another good year,
second-team All-America at the end of the year,
I'd be like, yeah, that's not surprising.
He averaged 18 and 7. Like, that doesn't shock me.
In the sense of Elijah Martin, first of all, I'm kind of shocked he didn't pursue the transfer portal. I thought that he was very much a transfer portal candidate. A little bit more than Nelly, because he probably needs a year of like really good performances, because he's 6'2" or 6'1", and that's going to limit him. But also, he is athletic as hell, and he's great defensively. And there were times last year where Dusty May would tell me, guys, hey Kevin, man, he's our best defender. And when we need a defensive stop, he's the one we're going to. And so like, he's a very
Kevin part.
I mean, we're boys. No, I'm kidding. But but like, there is this real discussion of like, what is he in terms of being a good college player? I don't think he's a number 1. I think he's a really good number 2, and that's good for FAU. They don't need him to be a number 1.
Yeah, I don't think he's an American Conference Player of the Year type guy, but he's a first-team All-American Conference type guy.
Pretty.
Vlad Golden was an analytics darling all year. Number 1 in the Evan Mia stat, BPR, Bayesian performance rating.
Yeah.
By the way, once you get to a stat that's called Bayesian performance rating, you might be too deep in the rabbit hole of whatever sport it is that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that like Vlad is a very good basketball player who didn't know what to do last year. Like, it felt like at times he was just sort of lost. And
at times.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where
he was way more than just at times.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably more so he was lost at times than like being really knowing what to do with his size. And when you have a guy at that size, he's got to play at that size. There were moments where you saw him play at that size and you went, man, he's going to be really damn good. And again, then you remember he's only a sophomore? He's only a junior. Still has like 2 or 3 years left of eligibility. Like, there are 3 years left.
What steps do you think Vlad's going to take to improve his game this year, to maybe not look as lost sometimes?
The biggest thing is he has to be stronger. San Diego State sort of bullied him.
You know what I think he's going to do? I think he's going to be a better passer.
If he's a better passer, that team's dangerous, because if there is a situation where you can play him in that sort of free throw line elbow situation and just let dudes cut, Elijah Martin, as one of the more athletic players in the country, that's a scary thought.
Yeah, I think that's the situation where Elijah Martin is an All-American type player.
Yeah, if there Vlad is, if Vlad Golden could just stick the elbow,
and I think Vlad Golden, I saw some signs. There was one play in the tournament where you were at the game. We were both at the game.
I was at the game. You're right.
In New York, you were at all the tournament games.
No, I was not at the FDU one. That's the one I could not go to.
Why not?
I had to fly home.
Okay. I do remember after the Kansas State game, we were in that media room at MSG, and I was telling you, find a way to get to Houston. Find a way to get to Houston.
Yeah. Well, and so
found a way to get to Houston.
So I'm going to be honest. Every single tournament, and this was the dumbest thing I've ever done. I would book non-refundable tickets. So I booked a non-refundable ticket for the Memphis game, and it was like, well, the game ended. I'm not going to spend $500 to switch that ticket. And then you would think that Kevin would learn from that mistake and not book a non-refundable ticket. Kevin booked a non-refundable ticket to New York as well.
I mean, let's be honest here. Flights from New York to Miami are a dime a dozen.
Well, it is, but it's also a lot of money to switch a flight if it's non-refundable and it's the day
Good
before
point.
the flight.
I mean, my mom and dad take flights from New York to Miami like
so
every month to look at a new condo.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think you were in the media room when this was happening, but I was calling Delta in the media room trying to get my flight switched.
I was not there, but that was funny. I do remember when I went up to you and I was like, "Hey, I know you from broadcasting."
That was weird. Don't ever do that again.
Well, yeah, I won't have to do it again because I now know you from Twitter.
But also, Vlad Golden's really good. He can be really good. If he learns how to be more of a center, that team is really good because they would now have a starting center who is worth a dime. And
yeah, all right. And we've talked about a lot of these guys. Brandon Witherspoon, I think, could be a really good player.
Brandon Witherspoon is the great glue guy who keeps the team together. And when you need a stretch of 2 minutes where someone's going to have to score points for you, he can get you 2 or 3 threes, and you can feel a lot more comfortable about where you are because of
And that's exactly what FAU did. Every single player on his team, you know what? He can get you 2 or 3 threes in a 2-minute stretch. If it's Nelly, if it's Elijah. Heck, I mean, you could say Nick Boyd, Brian Greenlee, even Gaffney. Gaffney can shoot a little bit.
Gaffney deserves more credit. I'm going to say this now. Gaffney deserves more credit for how well he played last year at times.
Gaffney, there was a moment when, because I watched Jalen Gaffney for 3 years at UConn.
Yes, probably.
Yeah, 3 years, because he came in the same class as Book Knight. First year, didn't play much. Second year was meh. Third year was pretty bad. But there was a moment in the Villanova game. His third year, the one at the XL Center, the one that everyone remembers, the one that ended with the RJ Cole shot, the one that saved my life. I'm sure Jonathan remembers the game.
Yeah, I remember it.
I very briefly remember it. I was not a huge UConn.
There were a couple. It was in the middle of that game where Gaff made some plays and kept the game alive when RJ went out with foul trouble.
Yeah,
Gaffney played 5 minutes that game. 5 minutes, but he made a 3 and kept the ball in on a play that would have been a 10-second violation, I think. And that was essentially what won UConn that game.
I think that
those minutes where RJ didn't play, those 5 minutes where they stood pat, kept the game at the same level, that won UConn the game and brought UConn back as a program. So Jalen Gaffney is a player that will forever live on in my heart for that, and I think deserves a lot more credit for the fact that, you know what, he's a Final Four basketball player. He might not have been able to cut it at UConn, but he's a Final Four basketball player.
So I will say this: that sort of sounds like how FAU used him last year. He was not a starter. He was very much the third or fourth guard off the team. But when they needed a guy who was going to come in there and just defend his behind off for 5 minutes, and you were going to get good basketball from him, you were going to get good basketball from him for 5 minutes. Hopefully he can do that a little bit more consistently because there's no longer Mike Forrest to give him those or to take those minutes away from him. He's going to have to be better. And if he's better, man, we're looking at a team that's deeper than they may have been last year because Jalen Gaffney has all the talent in the world. He just has to find a way to put it all together.
Yeah, and I think Dusty May is one of the best coaches in the country. I think we both have him in the top 20, right?
I have him in the top 10, but
I think that's a little bit of a stretch right now.
No, I don't care.
I'd have to
I get it. I mean, we both like our coaches a lot more than some other people do. I mean, I was a Dan Hurley fan from day one.
You probably have Matt Painter in the top 10. He can't even beat up.
I don't have Matt Painter. I'm actually very low on Matt Painter.
Whatever. I mean,
I moved him up incrementally throughout the offseason, though. I had him at like 40 at one point. That was dumb. But he's closer to like 20.
So you're going to realize, Sam, I just sort of like coaches that can build programs. And, I like the quote-unquote certified program builders of guys who,
Kelvin Sampson.
If you give him 4 years, if you give him the patience of 4 years, he's going to get you to the tournament.
Dan Hurley. You probably think Dan Hurley's the best coach in the country.
No, Dan Hurley's one of those guys who, if you give him 4 years in a program, it may be ugly for 2 of those years, and it's going to be really bad. And you're going to wonder why you kept him there. And then he's going to make the tournament, and you're going to go,
I never wondered.
Well, yeah, I mean, you didn't wonder because you know ball, but so many casual fans are going to sit here and go, man, we're losing these games that we should be.
There were a lot of haters. I'll say that.
And I remember thinking, man, why is this guy on the hot seat? Every year they've gotten better. they're recruiting that area really good.
Exactly. And that's the thing with Dusty May. Every year FAU got better. And
yeah, every year FAU got better, and every year it felt like
they just signed him to a 10-year contract extension.
I think my prediction right now, we can book this on this recording, and you can sit here and ask me again about it in 5 years. I think he's still the coach in 5 years.
I agree.
I don't think there is a reason for him to leave.
Look, I think the only job he leaves FAU for
is Indiana. And I don't think Mike Woodson's getting fired. I don't think
Mike Woodson's good. But
I don't think he's very good either, but I think he's done enough.
Himself time.
Yeah, I mean, these tournament appearances, they're giving him another year.
And he's an NBA coach too, so
he's like
that.
Indiana fans just also like remember like what they were.
Yeah, Indiana fans just want to be Bob Knight 2.0. Every Indiana fan just wants Bob Knight 2.0.
Right.
But also,
every Indiana fan wants Bobby Knight 2.0, and there's no such thing as Bobby Knight 2.0. There isn't.
There never will be a such thing as Bobby Knight 2.0. Guys, can we stop pretending like there is?
And Indiana fans need to realize that, look, Mike Woodson blows.
Oh, come on. He's not that bad.
He doesn't blow, but he's a little bit overhyped.
No, like he's just a good college basketball coach. He's not a great college basketball
coach. He's a mediocre coach. He's an average Big Ten coach.
But I will say
Sam,
this.
That's something that you and we're getting a little off track here, but that's something you and I talk about. Like I put out my top 50 coaches list every summer. There's more than 50 good coaches in the country.
Yeah, guys, college basketball coaching is kind of at like an all-time high, it feels like, in terms of like good coaches.
Every single year I look at this list and I say, you know what? It feels like there's a lot of really good coaches here. There's a lot of breakout guys. And hey, Tad Boyle, who was a top 30 coach last year, hey, he's not in my top 50 anymore. But you know what? I still think he's a really underrated coach.
That does not mean he's a bad coach.
Team is going to stink this year.
Here's the thing, is like, if Dusty May did not leave after making the Final Four and decided, yeah, you know what, I'll sign a 10-year extension with you. You don't sign a 10-year extension leaving in a year. That does not happen. You stay at least another year, another 2 years. And
he's staying for the next 5.
All evidence has pointed towards, in the conversations that we've had during media availability and stuff, is like, I don't have a reason to leave. I don't have a reason to leave. I love it here. I live in Boca Raton for the entire year, and I get to coach college basketball at a school that's on the rise. Why would I leave?
Raton for the entire year is kind of psycho behavior, but I respect it.
I don't know, man. It's, if you've got money, Boca Raton's a great place.
Living there in the summer is kind of psycho behavior.
Oh yeah, I would never do such a thing.
Hey, I had a dream about Publix last night.
I will also say that as someone who knows people who cover and coach high school basketball down here, the one guy who I will say keep an eye on is Brennan Lorient, because Brennan Lorient pops. And if we are talking about a dude who can be a really good, big sort of point forward kind of dude, he pops. And he, when the ball's in his hands, get out of his way, because he's gonna jump over you. So
all right, we've got a couple Florida questions for you before we're done.
Oh God.
All right, when you go to Publix, how often do you go to Publix?
Probably once or twice a week.
Yep, that sounds like it's a little bit less than the average Floridian.
Okay, I mean, if I'm going, is it just grocery shopping? If it's grocery shopping, I'll go.
No, you can.
What pub sub do you get?
It depends. If I'm in the mood, it's a chicken tender sub, tossed in either buffalo or honey mustard, depending on how I'm feeling. And then if I don't want a chicken tender sub, because those can get really heavy, and I don't want to eat that every day, I just get an Italian, because their lunch, it's Boar's Head lunch meat. Boar's Head lunch meat's elite. So
my friend from Boca loves the chicken tender one.
The chicken tender one's the best, but it's also like 1,400 calories, and you feel like you feel like, I don't know if I can curse on here
every day for lunch.
I feel like I gained 3 pounds just listening to that.
So you'll take like
I
a
don't
few
burn
bites.
1,400 calories in a week.
You'll take a few bites and you'll go, this is really good. Then after you get through like half of it, you're like, man, I already bought the other half. It's not going to sit well in the fridge. I kind of got to finish it. So it's not great in terms of like eating.
I don't know if I'm going to burn 1,400 calories in the next month for the spring.
Little bro. No.
Don't say that out loud.
But like also the other thing is like, I really like the jerk turkey and Gouda sub. If you want a little spice and a little kick, that sub's amazing. I just don't get it enough. I should start getting it more often.
Okay. All right. Here's the question for you. Did you know that Florida has the second most Wawas of any state?
Yes, I did.
Do you know what state is ahead of them?
New Jersey or Philadelphia.
That is correct.
Probably one of those.
Did I say that to you?
No, I just know it's one in New Jersey or Philadelphia.
That's impressive.
I also know that
Wait,
I
did you say
thought
Philadelphia is a state?
or Pennsylvania.
I was thinking the same thing. I didn't want to correct you.
You guys should have just let me go. You guys should have just seen how long I keep saying Pennsylvania or Philadelphia.
Look. Philadelphia is a great city. My brother's there right now. He goes to school at University of Pennsylvania.
It is not a state.
It is not a state. I can confirm, as someone who's been to both Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, neither of them are states. Now, they both think they're states.
They all want to pretend like they
The
are.
Pittsburgh mentality, man. Yin's gotta know Pittsburgh's a state. Or the Philly mentality, where it's like, I don't. Yo, Adrian, I did it.
That's awful. Don't ever do that again.
I know. I'm so bad at a Rocky voice.
Please never do that again.
Great movie though.
Great movie.
One of probably the greatest sports movie series of all time.
It's up there. I
All right,
would.
We gotta end this.
Oh, do we really have?
So leave
to?
me with 3 thoughts about FAU basketball. What could make their season go wrong? What you expect, and what could make their season go right?
I'll start with what I expect. I expect them to be a tournament team. I expect them to be back in the Sweet 16. From there, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. What has to go right? Pretty much everything again. Like, it feels like that may just be a thing. I will say, I've said it before, I think Dusty May is one of the best coaches in college basketball. I think he's one of the best one-day game planners in college basketball. So, like, bet on him as much as you can, because that guy's going to make sure that he wins. And he is so committed to it. And that team, from being around that team for 3 or 4 years, you keep seeing the shift in culture and sort of the program building itself as one of the best. What can go wrong? Well, guys, if they get a few injuries, that's still not the best team in the American or second best team in the American. And last year they survived injury luck for most of the year, bar like a very brief absence for Mike Forrest at the beginning of the year. And if that happens and they miss a few guys, like let's say Elijah Martin misses a few weeks this season, they may not be a tournament team because they just may not be able to survive that more than like a week or two stretch without him. The other thing that goes wrong is they just don't find a way to replace the leader that Mike Forrest was. And I think that they're going to do that, but I think there is still a situation, and I don't like you guys are going to quickly learn. I don't evaluate college basketball as like just well, this guy's really good at basketball, they're going to be fine. Like, you still need a dude who's just there, who's a vet, who knows what who knows what the program is. They have a few guys like that now because that whole team has stayed together for a few years, but they still need to find a guy who's your Mike Forrest replacement. I think it's probably one of Nelly, Elijah Martin, or Nick Boyd. Nick Boyd is very much the vocal leader of that team.
Yeah, I think Greenlee's not like that type of guy, but
Greenlee's a very unheard sort of dude. He's just
I
gonna.
like Greenlee. Like Greenlee was.
I love Greenlee.
I'm not sure if you caught this, but you probably did. Greenlee was sitting in on the press conference.
Yeah, he did.
That was funny. I found that funny.
I spoke to Greenlee. I think it was after the Sweet 16 game when they beat Tennessee. And there was a stat that got pulled up of like, hey, man, only a 1% of brackets picked them or whatever. And Greenlee told me, he was like, I don't give a shit, dude. We're here. What are you going to do? Tell me like we're not here? Like, I don't care. He's
guys,
awesome.
That was awesome. We got 9 o'clock. Tommy Cavanaugh coming on for some St. John's talk. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., Kyle Tucker will be joining us to talk Kentucky. So, yeah, we go from Kevin Fielder to Kyle Tucker.
Wow. How do you guys upgrade so quickly?
I don't know. I'm not sure why he responded to my message. At 1 o'clock, Maddie Hartley's joining us. We're going to talk KU. And at 3, Carter Elliott's going to join us, and we're going to talk Michigan State.
Wow. So you're talking about 3 programs worse than FAU. Congratulations.
3 programs that will, without a doubt, be interesting.
They will be college basketball teams next year. I can guarantee that.
Well, we think that they will. We're not 100% sure of that.
I can't guarantee anything.
We're not sure that John Calipari has enough real people.
After that, I can't tell you what they're going to be.
We will discuss whether Zvonimir Ivisic is a real human being.
If you could get the answer, I would love to hear the answer because I'm not sure he is.
Your take?
I think I'm going to step out of this one.
All right, we gotta go. We'll see you in about 40 minutes.